Gururna sasyat swajano na sasyat. Pita na sasyat janani na sasyat. Daivam na tatsyan na patis jasasyan. Namo chayedyah samupeta mrityum. Yeah, just put the charging. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. One who cannot deliver his dependents from the path of repeated birth and death should never become a spiritual master, a father, a husband, a mother, or a worshipable demigod. Purport. There are many spiritual masters, but Rishabdev advises that one should not become a spiritual master if he is unable to save his disciple from the path of birth and death. Unless one is a pure devotee of Krishna, he cannot save himself from the path of repeated birth and death. Tvaktvadeham punarjanma naiti mameti suarjuna. One can stop birth and death only by returning home back to Godhead. However, who can go back to Godhead unless he understands the Supreme Lord in truth? Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tattvataha. We have many instances in history illustrating Rishabdev's instructions. Shukracharya was rejected by Bali Maharaj due to his inability to save Bali Maharaj from the path of repeated birth and death. Shukracharya was not a pure devotee. He was more or less inclined to fruitive activity. And he objected when Bali Maharaj promised to give everything to Lord Vishnu. Actually, one is supposed to give everything to the Lord because everything belongs to the Lord. Consequently, the Supreme Lord advises in Bhagavad Gita 9:27, Yat karosi yadasnasi yad juhosi dadasi yat tapasyasi kanteya tat kuruswa madarpanam. O son of Kunti, all that you do, all that you eat, all that you offer and give away, as well as all the austerities that you may perform, should be done as an offering to me. This is bhakti. Unless one is devoted, he cannot give everything to the Supreme Lord. Unless one can do so, he cannot become a spiritual master, husband, father, or mother. Similarly, the wives of the Brahmanas who were performing sacrifices gave up their relatives. Just to satisfy Krishna. This is an example of a wife rejecting a husband who cannot deliver her from the impending dangers of birth and death. Similarly, Prahlad Maharaj rejected his father and Bharat Maharaj rejected his mother. Janani na sasyat. The word Daivam indicates a demigod or one who accepts worship from a dependent. Ordinarily, the spiritual master, husband, father, mother, or superior relative accepts worship from an inferior relative. But here Rishabdev forbids that. First, the father, spiritual master or husband, must be able to release the dependent from the repeated birth and death. If he cannot do this, he plunges himself into an ocean of reproachment for his unlawful activities. Everyone should be very responsible and take charge of his dependents, just as a spiritual master takes charge of his disciple or a father takes charge of his son. All these responsibilities cannot be discharged honestly unless one can save the dependent from repeated birth and death. One who cannot deliver his dependents from the path of repeated birth and death should never become a spiritual master, a father, a husband, a mother, or a worshipable demigod. Lord Rishabdev is stressing or emphasizing the point that human life is meant for higher responsibilities. Lord Rishabdev explains that human life is not meant to be led simply like cats and dogs. Simply reminiscing on chewing the chewed, or as Lord Rishabdev says, vidbhuja. Chasing after the stool like sense pleasures. Life is meant for higher responsibilities, and it is a sense of responsibility which is being ignited by this instruction of Lord Rishabh that one should not try to take any authoritative position unless one can deliver one's dependents from the cycle of birth and death. This goes to show that this goal is the prime fabric of every relationship. That means in any relationship or every relationship, this particular goal should be the pivotal focus or all-time focus. This particular goal should be the all-time focus. Otherwise, all one's activities are going to be very, very troublesome for the entire world at large as well. Not only just for oneself, but for the entire world at large. In the Bhagavatam, there is a beautiful section comes. Lord Shiva is produced. Lord Shiva has appeared from, I believe, the eyebrows of Brahmaji. Yeah, the eyebrows. He was angry, so Lord Brahma, from his eyebrows, Lord Shiva appears. Obviously, Lord Shiva comes from Lord Sadashiva, who is eternal, who has a Vaikuntha planet, who is like Lord Vishnu only. Lord Sadashiva. Lord Shiva appears in the universe through the eyebrow, in between the eyebrows of the Brahmaji. Now Lord Shiva is produced Rudra, and as soon as Lord Shiva is produced, Lord Shiva is given the charge of progeny by Brahmaji, and immediately Lord Shiva starts producing. When he starts producing, all kinds of ghosts and hobgoblins and very dangerous kinds of creatures are produced. And one of those creatures, it is explained in Bhagavatam, were homosexual candidates. And they started attacking Brahmaji only for homosexual assault. And Brahmaji got very afraid. He said, my dear son, please stop. Stop, 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 stop. Don't do progeny. Don't do progeny. And Lord Shiva said, what happened, father? No. He said, no, 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 stop, stop, stop. Don't do progeny. You don't produce anything. You don't create anything, because what you're creating is havoc. You please stop, curfew, And then Lord Shiva said, what should I do? He said, oh, you better do tapasya. Sit down, chant Hare Krishna, For how long? For a good long time, And Lord Shiva followed. Lord Shiva did tapasya for a good long time, And then he was given the charge of universal affairs, So there the Acharyas explain the purport that you see one needs to do tapasya so that before one embarks on any relationship, whether it is a relationship based on progeny, or it is a relationship or the maintenance or the upbringing of a relationship, any relationship requires tapasya. Because unless the heart is purified, the reciprocation in the relationship leads to havoc. So that's what happens actually. Materialistic people embark into relationships, and the more they embark into different relationships, it creates havoc. That's exactly what happens. That's the nature of material relationship. You see, Karna, he embarked on the material relationship. What was that relationship? Friendship with Duryodhana, demoniac personality, based on materialistic outlook. What happened? Havoc. What happened? Havoc. How? No, because Karna associated with such a demoniac personality, Duryodhana, he developed such a vicious and demonic mentality himself. Power of association. And therefore it was Karna who in the Dhuta Krida, who gave the idea of disrobing mother Draupadi. It was Karna who gave that nasty demoniac idea. Yeah, it was Karna who gave that demoniac idea, that nasty idea, which led to the assault attempt of Mother Draupadi by the Kauravas, which actually led to Mahabharata and the devastation of the whole world. So, materialistic relationship, if one embarks upon, it leads to havoc for the whole world. It leads to havoc for the whole world. And that is something which is being explained. And therefore, Lord Rishabdev is overwhelmingly again and again saying that human life is meant for tapasya. And especially, and now you see from different angles Lord Rishabdev is explaining. First, he explained that, okay, tapo divyam putrakayena satvam, that because you've got this human life is meant for tapasya, and therefore you're not meant to eat the stool just like a hog. And then there are higher responsibility. Now Lord Rishabdev is explaining from another angle. That, okay, think about your dependents. And any relationship requires Krishna consciousness. Any relationship requires tapasya, requires austerity, the purification of the heart, so that one can train one's dependents. One can train one's dependents. Like one time we were students, so Brajavasi Prabhu was teaching us, preaching, and he used to tell that, okay, if you want, so one day he told us, okay, if you want to do good preaching, you should do very solid morning program. We were all hearing, oh, morning program? What morning program has to give and take with preaching? We were wondering, So, preaching means, read proper books, take out some good points from that and speak that with nicely, powerfully, boldly, That is preaching, What morning program, chanting, what is that give and take? He said, no. So then he was saying, he said, no, the point is that if you don't do morning program very nicely and hear Krishna Katha very nicely, attend Mangalarti very enthusiastically and chant very nicely, attentively in the morning hours, you will not have spiritual strength. If you don't have spiritual strength, what you will give to others? You may have feelings of compassion or so-called, means little bit, tiny puny droplets of compassion. And positive feelings for helping the world and helping the people, but if you don't have spiritual substance, you won't be able to help. So, even for the sake of helping others, one should think that, okay, if I don't attend myself morning program very nicely, I will not be able to preach nicely. Oh, that was a lesson for our life. I know it was a lesson for my life. I learned, oh, if you don't have spiritual sense, so what Prabhu was triggering was that, okay, this sense of helping our own fellow, KGP, candidates, students, we had that feeling that, okay, let's help them. They become so degraded, they take to such animalistic, nasty activity. Let's help them. Let's protect them. That kind of feeling was there. So he was tapping that feeling and igniting or impressing the point that if you don't do the sadhana very nicely, morning program very nicely, you don't hear very nicely Krishna Katha, you won't have the spiritual strength. How will you be able to help? So that feeling of, okay, let me help the people around, that feeling of connection or affection, or he was using that feeling to impress upon the point that we need to gather spiritual substance. And Lord Rishabh is doing the same thing. Lord Rishabh is telling, okay, all your dependents, you won't be able to help them. You will create havoc in their lives, you will create havoc in your lives, and you will create havoc in everybody's lives simply by embarking on relationships and not infusing Krishna consciousness. And we cannot infuse Krishna consciousness unless we have a very strong stock of Krishna consciousness. Unless we have a very strong stock of Krishna consciousness. And therefore, before embarking on any relationships, our own Krishna consciousness is required. So even a materialistic pious king like Prachin Bari Maharaj also had that kind of consciousness. That, okay, he had progeny, he had a lot of sons, he wanted to make them king. He said, okay, now I want you to become king, and means marry and then become king. And I want him to become king. So you better go to the forest and perform austerities for a good long time, then come back. Why? Because Guru na sasyat, Pita na sasyat, Swajano na sasyat, Janani na sasyat, na mochayet. Because one should not try to become any leadership, any authority over anyone unless one has the capacity to take them beyond the cycle of birth and death. So then we were making this point, take them beyond this cycle of birth and death, Guru no sasya, Janani na. And then when one doesn't do that, it creates havoc. Bhagavatam 6 Canto explains the life of Chitraketu Maharaj. Chitraketu Maharaj is a king. There was a very small problem in his life. He's a king of the Vidyadhara planets, the heavenly planets, which are pious planets. He had so many nice, good looking, very beautiful, very saintly wives, because it is heavenly planet. People are very cultured and pious. Now, Chitraketu Maharaj is not having a son, is a small detail, but he was a king. All the citizens were his sons and daughters. He did not practice spiritual life. He did not practice spiritual life. He just thought, okay, let me have a son. He was crying. Angira Muni came, he wanted to give him Krishna consciousness. Chitraketu Maharaj not ready. He was not ready to chant Hare Krishna. He was chanting son, want son, I want son. Angira Muni said, okay, so be it. I'll give you son. Okay, don't cry. So he got a son. Still, he did not take Krishna consciousness from Angira Muni. He just became very elated and ecstatic. Oh, I'll get a son. Finished, He did not awaken to his spiritual life. So he got a son. Now you see, he did not follow Lord Rishabhdeva's instructions. Guru na sasyat, Swajano na sasyat. Unless you have spiritual upbringing, spiritual tapasya, unless you train your dependents spiritually, it is going to create havoc. He did not follow this particular instruction of Rishabhdev. So what happened? So when he got son, he got so attached to that son, and the queen, Kritaduti, Mother Kritaduti, who begot that son, so he neglected all the other queens. His neglect of the other queens increased the envy and anger in their hearts. They became so envious and anger because they were so much misneglected. Maltreatment, neglect, abuse. That's an abuse. Prolonged abuse makes a person very hardened in the heart. They became so hardened in the heart, they thought, okay, we have to poison the child. They poisoned the child. Chitraketu Maharaj, Kritaduti are devastated. The whole kingdom is devastated. The whole kingdom was devastated all through. When Chitraketu Maharaj didn't had a son, they were devastated. When he got a son, they were devastated. And when his son died, then also they devastated. Because all through Chitraketu Maharaj is not ruling properly. He is not doing his duties as a king. So he is creating devastation. Guru Nasasya, Swajana Nasasya. He is not following this principle, he is creating devastation. So who killed that son? Not the queens. Not the queens. They were forced to become like that by Chitraketu himself. Chitraketu Maharaj himself was a murderer. Guru na sasyat, swajano na sasyat. Because he did not, this goal was not there in his mind that, okay, my wife, my children, my citizens, my son, let me give them Krishna consciousness. And how can I give unless I have Krishna consciousness? He was not awakened to reality. It created devastation in his life, in his wife Kritaduti's life, the other pious queens who were forced to become murderers, and the citizens' life. And therefore, this should be the prime focus of our lives, that, okay, all the people whom we relate with, whom we connect to, whether in business dealings, in our professional dealings, in our neighborhood dealings, in our social dealings, in our familial dealings, let us give them Krishna consciousness. And therefore, let us gather more and more so that we can share with them. And we'll end on this point that you see this principle was exactly and very nicely followed by Srila Prabhupada's father, Srila Gaur Mohan De. And Srila Gaur Mohan De's only obsession was, my son should become a devotee of Krishna. My son should get the mercy of Srimati Radharani. He should become a great devotee of Srimati Radharani. Even so, all his meditation throughout was, how can my son become the recipient of the mercy of Srimati Radharani. And therefore, he would call so many sadhus and feed them, bogus or genuine, doesn't matter. He would feed them with his heart. And at the end of it, all he had was, with folded hands, he would pray that, please bless that my son becomes a great devotee of Srimati Radharani. He was leading such an impeccable example of solid morning program. Prabhupada, even as an infant, would get up ringing the bell of his father doing deity worship. Prabhupada would open his eyes and he would see his father doing deity worship. And that's why Prabhupada, he himself got the desire to take darshan of Radha Govind deities hours and hours. And then when he became a little elder, he demanded not for toys, but for deities. Prabhupada's father perfectly followed this principle. What was the result? The result was such a benediction for humanity. Srila Prabhupada, who changed the face of the world, because of whom millions and millions of people are able to get Krishna consciousness, who became such a beautiful instrument in the hands of Srimati Radharani. So therefore, we see such a perfect example. Why? Because Srila Gaur Mohan De's whole meditation was, therefore Prabhupada says that, when Prabhupada was saying, Prabhupada would say one time, he said that, my father wanted me to become like this. So Prabhupada was sannyasi, he was saying, my father wanted me to become like this, and so did I become. So because his father perfectly followed this principle, Guru na sasyat, pita na sasyat, namo chayet. Let's stop here for today. Do we have any questions? Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada was not only a spiritual master, but he's also a good father. Yet his children did not become devotee. Would you like to comment on that?
Yes. So yes, Srila Prabhupada was very responsible in his life, because the day Srila Prabhupada met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, that day only he wanted to give up everything and just join the mission of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj. But he stayed back because he was already married. He had responsibility of his wife and he had children. He had children also. 1922, Prabhupada had children also when he first met. And therefore he stayed back. But he adopted the mission of the spiritual master. And he was using his reputation for preaching. He was using his reputation for preaching. All through, Prabhupada helped his family members spiritually. Prabhupada led a very powerful spiritual example. Unfortunately, his sons and daughters and his wife did not take up Krishna consciousness. Now that is free will of the living entity. But Prabhupada tried his best, and Prabhupada tried it best. He facilitated them materially also. So therefore, even Prabhupada was taking sannyas. Prabhupada left all his property, all his wealth, everything in their hands. That is why when Prabhupada was in Delhi, Prabhupada was not having enough food, enough money to eat food 3 times a day. And Prabhupada was wearing tattered dhoti kurta, torn dhoti kurta. He did not have money to get a new pair. Prabhupada was using a torn pair of dhoti kurta. He did not have money to. So Prabhupada was in such a situation, although he had been a very successful businessman, and then he had worked in Smith Industries when he was in Bombay, and then he had his own setup in Calcutta. 1936 onwards, especially after Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sri Thakur Maharaj disappeared. So, Prabhupada gave everything to his children. They did not reciprocate. Now, but definitely one thing we understand is that that Prabhupada's children, because of connection to Prabhupada, they would benefit in their eventual journey of Krishna consciousness. So we need to be focused on our duty, not on the results what will come. Not on the duty. So Prabhupada did his duty very nicely, and definitely one thing we have heard from all senior devotees, that Prabhupada's children will be elevated. Even though they did not choose to practice, they will be surely elevated. And what was the result? They will be elevated just because Prabhupada did his duty very nicely. So that I have heard from many senior devotees. And they say that okay, Prabhupada's sons, although they did not explicitly practice or help him in his mission, but they'll be elevated just because of their connection to Prabhupada and just because of the prayers of Srila Prabhupada. You see, because of prayers of Prahlad Maharaj, Hiranyakashipu was elevated. So just because of the prayers of just because of the now in Bhagavatam also this section comes where Anga Maharaj is a pure devotee and Vena, the Anga Maharaj's son, is a pure demon. So pure devotee versus pure demon. Anga Maharaj tried so much, Vena did not become. Prabhupada's children were not like Vena. Prabhupada's children, just that they were not actively supporting Prabhupada and Prabhupada's mission, and we do not hear of them very actively or intensely practicing. But Prabhupada's third son was quite a well-wisher. The youngest son was quite a well-wisher to ISKCON, like that we know. So, but then Bhagavatam gives this superlative extreme example of Anga Maharaj Vena pair also. So Vena Maharaj, he was a pure demon. Anga Maharaj tried so much, it didn't work out. So Anga Maharaj thought, okay, let me continue my spiritual responsibilities. We have to understand the parental responsibilities are not the only responsibilities. So Anga Maharaj moved forward. After fulfilling his kingly responsibilities, he moved forward. He went to the forest. He took sannyas. He perfected his life. And Vena Maharaj, he left them to the training of the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas gave a lot of opportunity to Vena Maharaj to rectify. One of the reasons why they gave so much opportunity, because he was connected to Anga Maharaj, a pure Mahabhagavad devotee. Therefore, he was given so much chances. He was given so much affection and care and attempts by the Brahmanas. But when he was not at all responding, his demoniac tendencies not at all going, then the Brahmanas took a strong stand, so they killed him. Like that. This goes to show that we have to do our responsibilities very nicely. We have to do our responsibilities very nicely. And then what will happen is, now what the Brahmanas did, they churned his body. They produced great personality, Shakti Avesh avatar of the Lord, Prithu Maharaj and Mother Archi. Together they came, both of them, the role model, acharyas, I mean, there's a very Shakti Avesh avatar of the Lord, Prithu Maharaj and Mother Archi, they came. So in effect, actually, Anga Maharaj's son, was supposed to, help him in his mission, that could not get accomplished through Vena, because Vena did not, in spite of Anga Maharaj's attempts, Vena did not contribute. But it got worked out through Prithu Maharaj and Archi. So in effect, you see, Anga Maharaj's efforts were not futile. His efforts to contribute a devotee son for the humanity, got manifested in the form of Prithu Maharaj and Archi, who were Mahabhagavats, and they uplifted the whole world to become pure devotees. like that. So, so therefore, their tapasya, Anga Maharaj's tapasya was not futile. It would benefit Vena, but that tapasya was not futile. That tapasya did lead to a beautiful benediction for the world at large. In the same way, Prabhupada's tapasya of training his children was not futile, because although his own seminal sons and daughters did not take up his mission, his offering to humanity, his offering to the humanity, but the Lord arranged 10,000 sons and daughters for Prabhupada who took up that mission, and many of them are still carrying forward that mission, and millions have been benefited. So Prabhupada said that, okay, Krishna gave me 10,000 sons and daughters, and now it is millions of grandsons and granddaughters. So Prabhupada's spiritual upbringing produced that results, and that is why one has to be focused on one's duty, on giving spiritual training to one's sons and daughters. So even if the seminal son and daughter don't reciprocate, the mission, will the mission of offering a very nice devotee's son and daughter to the world will not go futile. That mission will not go futile. Krishna will arrange. Krishna will arrange.
Thank you.
So thank you, Hare Krishna. So let's stop here for today. Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.